Hi everyone, my name is Albert, one of the co-founders at VectorShift. Today we're going to talk about an exciting new feature that we just launched called Workbooks. You can think of Workbooks as a Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, but just for your VectorShift pipelines. This is especially good and helpful if you're creating a lot of sub-pipelines and you want to be able to tab back and forth between an overall parent pipeline and its sub-workflows to be able to make the necessary edits and then reflecting that across your entire automation. Let's head right in to show you why this could be helpful when you're building VectorShift workflows. When you create a new pipeline now, by just going to the new on your top right of your pipelines page and clicking create pipeline, you see at the very bottom of the screen this ability to have different tabs open of your VectorShift pipeline screen. Let's go ahead and create a new tab. You can do that by just clicking this plus button right here, giving now the workbook a name, and you're able to now add different subtabs to this workbook. Let's go ahead and add a new pipeline. As you can see from this screen, Untitled Pipeline 319, Untitled Pipeline 320 are just two pipelines. They will actually both show up on your pipeline screen. But there's now going to be a workbook that will now show up on your Workbooks tab on your VectorShift homepage. It's going to be called Overall Workbooks. Workbooks are just an overlay on top of pipelines. They allow you to group different pipelines together so that you're going to be able to edit them while being able to tab between them so that it makes creating pipelines and sub workflows easier. Let's go ahead and go through a simple example of why this could be helpful. A very common use case in VectorShift is to be able to use VectorShift to help you with URL scraping and lead research. So imagine, hypothetically, if I'm a company that sells into pharmaceutical companies and I have a lead list of a lot of URLs, and I want to be able to categorize which of these specific companies are my target customer and then provide a justification of whether or not this company is a pharmaceutical company or not. Let's go ahead and build a workflow in VectorShift that shows you how to do this. So whenever you're doing a process on repeat, you use a tool in VectorShift called list mode, which is we're going to apply the same workflow to every item in a list. The workflow that we're going to have to build is going to be able to process one of these URLs, and then we're going to call that workflow on every item in this 4-item list. So let's go ahead and create this workflow. What this workflow needs to be able to do is it needs to be able to take in one URL and needs to be able to take in the company that I'm in and the description of what my target customer is. And then we need to be able to scrape this URL and we need to be able to classify whether or not this data is fit for my target customer. So first thing is we're going to summarize the data in this URL. Let's go ahead and use a summarizer. And then I'm going to use a classification node to categorize whether the summary is related to the target customer. So we're going to classify this text, and I'm going to prompt it by saying, categorize whether or not this company is my target customer or not. So I'm going to say target customer as category 1, and category 2 is not target customer. And I'm going to include the justification with this. Now I need to be able to tell this categorizer node my target customer is coming from the input node. There we go. Now this pipeline needs to be able to output 2 outputs. Target customer, which will fill out column B. And another one about the justification. Let's go ahead and connect this node to both and fill out that this one is categorizer.category, and for justification, it's categorizer.justification. Let's go ahead and review this pipeline. This pipeline does the process for one of these URLs. It takes in who my target customer is, the URL, we summarize the URL after we scrape it, then we categorize whether or not the summary of this website is related to the target customer, and then we output the target and the justification. Let's go ahead and name this pipeline target customer categorizer. And let's go ahead and deploy this workflow. Now, I need to be able to create a second workflow that calls this pipeline on repeat on every item in this list. This is where the workbook functionality comes in handy. I can go right ahead and click on this other pipeline, Untitled Pipeline 319. Let's name this pipeline Master Pipeline. So this pipeline needs to take in this list, and then we need to call that pipeline that we just made on each item in that list, and then populate the data into column B and C. Let's go ahead and pull out a Google Sheets node, read from sheet, and let's go ahead and pick this file. There we go. So just like the spreadsheet, it's found the three different columns: website, target customer, and justification. As you can see here, we need to read this website column. As you can see, it's going to be read it as a list of text, which is going to be Apple, comma, Pfizer, comma, Merck, comma, Boeing. Now we need to call the pipeline that we just made called target customer categorizer. I found it right here. And this takes in two inputs of type text, as you can see over here. But we need to apply this to every item in this list. So we need to turn on list mode. So now we're accepting a list of text, and we're going to take in as the URL the website. Now, the target customer that we have in this hypothetical example is that I sell to pharmaceutical companies. And a target customer is anyone that is in the pharmaceuticals industry. And I need to pass that as a list into this pipeline node. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this the same amount of times as there are URLs, in this case 4, right? So the reason why I have to duplicate this and turn this into a list is because I can't connect a text into a list. So to do that, I'm going to use a duplicate node. I'm going to duplicate this text the same amount of times as the Google Sheets. So this is going to produce a list of size 4 with each item in the list being the same text. And now I'm going to be able to pass this in to this pipeline node. There we go. So we've also added this new feature called error handling mode on list operations. What this does is sometimes you're not able to say you're able to scrape a site and the scraping fails. Before this is going to fail the entire run. Now we set fail runs to default value, or you can fail the node. And now it's going to just skip nodes that it fails and just return an empty string and populate that empty string so that you're able to continue the process even though there might be a failure. Now let's go ahead and pass this data into the Google Sheet now. This pipeline node is producing two lists, the justification and the target. We need to pass that into column B and C. Let's grab a Google Sheets node and let's use the column list writer function. Go ahead and pick the file and let's select the file again. So we need to pass the target customer as pipeline.target. And for the justification, it is pipeline.justification. Let's go ahead and summarize what we did. This pipeline takes in a text field which says, I sell to pharmaceutical companies. Then it also reads the Google Sheets, the website column of 4 websites, and we pass those 4 websites into this pipeline along with a list of size 4, all containing the demographic of the company that I sell into. Now, we're going to execute this pipeline on each of the items in the for list. What it does is it takes in the target customer, which is I sell into pharmaceutical companies, and the URL. I scrape the URL, I summarize the URL, and I categorize whether or not this company fits my target demographic. I spit out the target and the justification, and I populate that as lists into this Google Sheet. Let's go ahead and run this workflow. Let's go ahead and click run. There we go. So it's identified that Pfizer and Merck are target customers, and indeed, there are pharmaceutical companies, and that Apple and Boeing are not target customers. And it's also provided justification. In the case that one of these URLs were not able to get scraped, it would have just have left that row as a blank. Hopefully this feature is helpful, and thank you very much. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Take care.